Hey everyone, welcome to the Immortality podcast. I'm your host, Jake, here with Josh, as usual. Today we're steeping some Taiwan Gaoshan or high mountain tea. This one is called Long Feng Xia, which means Dragon Phoenix Gorge. Basically, a gorge in the Shanlinshi area in Nantuo, Taiwan. So let's get to it. You can kind of see the leaves. They're very balled up. I think that's probably about 9 grams is how I weighed it out. Again, we're just gonna give everything a preheat, just to rinse the vessels, wake everything up, make sure everything's nice and hot.
This Long Feng Xia and the High Mountain Oolongs are one of my favorite varieties of teas.
Yeah, these are super popular.
I mean, there's something about them where I feel like I do get a lot of vitamins from them, but then also there's a relaxing quality to them. And then sometimes I feel when I'm drinking the High Mountain Oolongs, especially Long Feng Xia, that I'm basically drinking clouds.
Sure.
I'm drinking mist. I'm drinking like, just the ethereal elements.
Well, you kind of are, honestly.
Really? Okay.
Do you want to smell that?
Oh yeah, let's smell it. Oh, yeah. It's like fruity creamy.
Here, let me just get this started, and then I'll talk about it a little. So again, this is another one that we want to rinse. Didn't have anything to do with age. This one's rather young, obviously, but just to do with opening up the ball shapes a little, getting a little more surface area before we actually start drinking it. You could drink the first steep. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a little watery still, and it's kind of just customary to pour it out. So now let's see how that's smelling. Yeah, nice, creamy, floral. Very clean.
Oh my gosh, there's almost plantain.
Plantain, sure. Yeah.
There's like plantain, but like over-ripened plantain. Not like a plantain that's like starchy, but almost like an over-ripened plantain. It's beautiful.
Sure. So again, just for like in terms of brewing parameters here, this Gaiwan's a little bit on the small side. It's about 100 milliliters. Like I said, I think I throw about 9 grams of tea in there, which is like not crazy, but it's a little maybe on the heavy side. So I'm gonna adjust the steep times down a little, if that makes sense to everyone. The things you have to keep in mind are volume of vessel, amount of tea, and the time you're brewing for. So we'll probably mostly be doing flash steeps until the end here. Like 5 seconds.
I think that's really important for people to know because I think drinking tea in the Gaiwan style is sometimes intimidating, and we definitely go hard in the paint on the ImmortaliTea podcast because we drink a lot of tea, and so
Absolutely.
We might brew just a little more tea leaves and then go with a shorter steeping time just because that's what we're going for, and so it's good to be aware of that, listeners.
And it's personal preference too. You have to understand, like, there's not really like a right or wrong way to do any of this, but you have to play with it, because maybe you like using a little less leaf and a little more time, like maybe that suits you more. Maybe you even want to push a little harder. Maybe you like really want to fill it and like just blast it and go. Like maybe you like your tea very strong. I noticed that I think I like my tea like just a little lighter than most people do. I like a little subtlety and like cleanliness in the cup.
When it's oversteeped, how do you tell? Because I had a friend, and then he was asking me a question about, did I oversteep the High Mountain Oolong? I left it like this, and then, we had a conversation about his oversteeping.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if I'm like of the mind that you can't really ruin good tea. Like if the tea is good enough, then it's gonna taste good, kind of no matter what you do to it within reason. The more you steep something like this, it'll get like a little on the bitter side, maybe just more of the vegetal flavors, less of the floral. I don't know. I like there to feel like there's space in the tea though, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm using a bit of a lighter touch here. But you can see anyone watching the video how much the leaves have already expanded. The Gaiwan's almost about 2/3 full already, just after 2 steeps. Just from that little amount of leaf balls we had.
when the Long Feng Xia unfurls, I love seeing the quality of the leaves. I mean, you can really see the quality of the individual leaf. I mean, there's like branches and stuff, and like little not branches, but there's like the stem where they picked it, and then the whole leaf unfurls. It's really a beautiful tea.
This steeping is very floral, very very floral.
Totally, like orchid, jasmine,
Yeah, lilac.
lilac.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it almost tastes purple.
Yeah, right. I know, it's crazy. Yeah, I guess circling to circle back to the beginning a little. When Josh, you mentioned that you were you kind of tasted like you felt like you were like tasting clouds and mist. So this is like, it's grown in like the center of the country. So like, Taiwan is an island, a pretty small island, right? But the center has like fairly high mountains. This one is grown between 5,900 and 6,500 feet. Yeah, and in the Shanlinshi region, which is like again in the center of the country, and this is a particular gorge in that region that receives a fair amount of sun and mist from the ocean. So things the high elevation teas do. Growing at a higher elevation is a little more difficult for the plant. There's less oxygen. There's less atmosphere. Because of the mist, there's like a little less direct sunlight. It's a little more shaded most of the time. Nights are obviously much colder. So really this just makes the tea plant work a lot harder. It produces more nutrients, polyphenols.
What is that? Is that about the third steep?
I think that was exactly the third steep, yeah. Yeah.
As you can tell, the high mountain oolongs help with focus and remembering how many tea steeps.
Please correct me in the comments if that was not the third steep. This one's not quite as floral, right? This one's a little more, what do you want to say, like squash or something? Or like...
Like, what if you could take the smell of a ripened plantain, but not the sweetness?
Sure, yeah.
Like, I don't know what that is, but it's just...
Yeah.
But squashy, greeny, a little more green.
Yeah.
But still very smooth. And like the tea is very clear.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden on the back end, as the flavor goes away, the fruit starts to come back. Oh.
And this is like, yeah, it's interesting because there's a little less top note, there's a little less floral than in the last steep, but there is a lot more body, more oomph now, and that has to do with the level to which the tea is opening now, which is why it's processed in the bald way, because it gives it like nuance and it lets you like experience the opening process.
That region of Taiwan, there's a lot of other famous or well-known high mountain oolongs.
Yeah.
What is maybe Long Feng Xia's difference? I mean, because they're coming from a similar area, but the gorge itself is higher. And then what are some other high mountain oolongs that kind of come out of that region?
Sure. So there's also, we've had it on the previous episode, the Fushoshan, right? That's actually a little higher than this one. And Lishan also is another famous one, also very, very high. I really like the Long Feng Xia though, like just on like a personal level. It feels a little, I guess just to me, like it's a preference thing. It feels like a little maybe cleaner than those, like with a little more subtle. Some of those like kind of hit you over the head with fruitiness, which is great. And just one of those things that you have to explore yourself as a tea drinker, like what you like, what mountains, what areas.
What's interesting is when I peruse other tea buyers' websites and I look for high mountain oolongs, I'll find a Dong Ding, I'll find an Alishan, I'll find a Shanlinshi, but it's harder for me to find the Long Feng Xia on, places from West Coast importers to East Coast importers.
It's a pretty small area, like I said. It's just like basically the one mountainside. So there's not a lot of it produced. I mean, going back to what we were talking about on the Long Feng Xia episode, like specialty tea versus commodity tea. Like Taiwan has plenty of just low-lying, heavily cultivated tea fields that are going to get like, okay, but quality tea for the most part. But specialty level tea, it's just you're basically like trading a smaller harvest for a higher quality. Just because there's not that many perfectly like sun-facing gorges shrouded in sea mist that will produce this level of tea, and it's just the difficulty of harvesting that for the humans and for the plants.
I took some of the Trident's Long Feng Xia and I sent it to some new tea drinkers who were familiar with high mountain oolongs and like green tea, and I think they were drinking a frozen summit. And it was interesting because as soon as they got the Long Feng Xia, their faces changed.
Yeah.
Like it was almost like they didn't realize that there were levels to it. And like the higher end high mountain oolongs are just, I really enjoy them. So like I really appreciate this tea. And like I hope no one buys it on the website because then I can't buy it.
Yeah. Dong Ding, you said for Frozen Summit. That's one that you see a lot. It used to refer to a specific mountain like this does. It used to refer to a specific place, but now it's more of a processing standard. If you see a Dong Ding, most of the time it's a Taiwanese oolong in this style that is usually bald and has some kind of medium percentage of oxidation, as opposed to this low level of oxidation this one has. So you have to be careful with some of those teas because Dong Ding can refer to a wide variety of qualities. Like some of it is very, very good, and some of it is just kind of medium. So just because someone says they have Dong Ding, don't get excited. What else? Sorry.
Oh, no, it's good. So what steep is this one? 4 or 5?
5, I want to say.
Yeah, 5.
Yeah.
I think you're 5, 6.
Yeah.
Again, if you're listening and watching, leave a note for us in the comments.
What steep are we on?
Yeah. For all your fellow tea drinkers to help spread the tea drinking knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of I think this crescendoed around steep 3 or 4 in terms of like fullness of flavor. Now we're kind of getting back to the more kind of medium bodied and like lighter profile of like the more of like the second steep.
How would you suggest this tea to someone who's never had a Long Feng Xia?
So again, this is a fairly specialty level tea. I think you want to maybe try a couple of slightly lower end Taiwan oolongs if you've never had them before, just to see if you like the genre, and then that would also give you a context for appreciating this. With this, there's just a lot more complexity and nuance than just say a commodity grade Dong Ding.
What I like about the Long Feng Xia and the premium or, emperor's grade, high mountain oolongs is you can really see how the plant lived its life as the tea leaf unfurls itself.
Sure.
And as the tea leaf unfurls itself, you can see the health of the plant. And, as someone who does like to garden in the summer months, you can tell what that plant went through by looking at the leaf. And I think that to me is one of the most beautiful things about drinking the high mountain oolongs, because you can tell the quality of the tea in the final leaf as it's unfurled.
Oh, yeah. One thing I also admire about this is the technique and processing. Like the Taiwanese like tea masters are just very sophisticated like techniques. Like the plucks are very nice, and like the ball rolling's very uniform. If you're watching, you can see this, but if not, basically we're pulling out leaves right now and seeing some like very long stems, like a whole leaf stem and bud complexes. Like this one has 3 different leaves on a large stem. That one's even bigger. There's just a little bit of like slight bruising around the edges. That's the oxidation. Of course, what that does, if you don't know, is oolongs want to be damaged just a little bit That releases more sweetness, more of the nutrients in the cell walls, more aroma. So the processing standard is just very, very high. Like there's a lot of artistry here.
And then as you can see, the leaves are still unfurling, so
Yeah.
we've still got a ways to go.
Yeah, we're not done yet. All right, bottoms up. So steep about 6, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. It doesn't go quite as long as a pour. But it goes a pretty long time. Like, you could definitely get a liter out of this one. And again, that's also related to how much your leaf to water ratio is.
I tend to push the Long Feng Xia, and then
Sure.
the High Mountain Oolongs I get longer just because I really like them and I try to savor them as much as I can.
Sure.
It's just one of those,
Yeah.
personal preferences.
Yeah. And yeah, and I hope no one's intimidated by the Gong Fu style of brewing. Again, it does take a little bit of practice, but it's it's mostly about figuring out what your preferences are. For a gaiwan like this, it's about 100 milliliters again, which is a little on the small side. I think a lot are like 150 is kind of more standard, and I'm using about the same amount of leaf as I would use for one of those. But I kind of like heavy leaf flash steeps. That's kind of my jam. But there's not really a wrong way to do it, and that's kind of the beauty of it too. Everyone no two people's like tea tastes exactly the same.
Well, and watching you steep this round of Long Feng Xia, I'm really liking this flash style technique. I mean, because it's basically all flavor, all body. You're not over steeping at all. And then if it's coming up light, it doesn't really matter because that aftertaste, because of the quality of the actual tea.
One of the things I use for myself just tasting teas is a Japanese shibori dashi, which is like super small, like 50 milliliters, the one I have. It's just good for like tasting lots of teas kind of in this style, but tasting them back to back to back and like getting the most out of like small batches. It's kind of a more laborious way to make tea, right? But just because you're brewing and brewing and brewing and brewing, but I find it to be worth it. Very, very, very good for like tasting.
I think we're going to continue steeping this Long Feng Xia. Are there any final thoughts, or is there anything you think people really need to know about the High Mountain Oolongs to kind of help them explore a little more?
Well, just to place it in like context, I could give a little history, which is that tea came from Taiwan to China in the 18th century, early 18th century, 1700s, and was grown in like the center of the country, like the Nantou County. Back then, the island was called Formosa, not Taiwan. So if you see Formosa Oolong, it means Taiwanese Oolong, just like kind of an old timey term. Some of the teas still carry that name, but since then, tea has become very, very elevated in Taiwan. There's a lot of different unique indigenous styles. They do a lot of things that are different than Chinese and like teas, and it's just has its own style, even if it's like largely like the Chinese varietals. They take them in a very different direction. So it's a lot of fun to explore this region.
Where can people find this tea?
This one we do currently have in the cafe available. It's very popular, so I don't know how much longer supplies are going to last. It's one that we get every year, but we get everything by harvest, right? And this one was harvest. This one was finished in the fall.
Yeah.
Still pretty strong.
It's nice. I'm a fan.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening once again. I'm your host, Jake, here with Josh. We just finished steeping some Long Feng Xia Gaoshan High Mountain Oolong from Taiwan. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you look into the teas.